Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
If you're struggling to lose weight, you've probably heard about weight loss medications like Wegovy or Zepbound, and you might be wondering if they're right for you. Meet PlushCare, a leading telehealth provider with doctors who are there for you day and night to partner with you in your weight loss journey. If you qualify, they can safely prescribe you medication from the comfort of your own home. To get started, visit plushcare.com/weightloss. That's plushcare.com/weightloss. plushcare.com/weightloss.
The Dental Download podcast is your source for insight from conversations with fellow dentists, specialists, and leaders in the industry. With new episodes every Monday morning, I'm your host, Dr. Haley. Let's get into this week's episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the first podcast that's actually a solo podcast, real time, because I know the last ones went up while I was in Florida with my family, and then we had a guest, and then I was in Greece with my family, and then we had a guest. And instead of doing a solo episode about licensing, I ended up bringing on a guest again because I thought it would be a lot more useful rather than just talking about 2024 licensing in the state of Michigan. I could bring on someone that's over a few different years of experience and worked on licensing in different states and kind of had more anecdotes to share of what licensing was like for their friends in different states as well. So that licensing episode has been up for a couple weeks if you haven't heard it already. But now we're back finally into our more traditional format of solo guest, and the solos will be recorded more real time for you all so that they're actually relevant as to what's going on in my life as a dentist now. So now I've been practicing as Dr. Haley for 2 full weeks of work, and I'm fully moved into our beautiful home that we are renting here in Southwest Michigan. So that's what this episode's going to be about. I'm going to be doing a full first month of work recap episode. That way I can have more of a reflective look back on what the journey was like progressing from week 1 to 3 to 4 and being in the office for a whole month, working independently for a whole month. But I wanted to touch a little bit on what I'm noticing different from school versus working so far, and just kind of some general highlights of what my schedule's like and how we're doing the whole onboarding process, because I know everyone's probably very curious. But before we get into that and talking about moving, I wanted to do our little catch-up intro for the week. So that's always life updates, a recommendation of the week, what motivated me this week, and something that I learned this week are those 4 that we're always going to hit on in the intros to the solo episodes. So life update, this is kind of a whole life update episode, right? So it's kind of hard to pick something to put in the little beginning segment for this. But the main things we can hit on is that I'm fully moved in now. As I said, Justin brought all of his furniture, so we have a couch and everything now upstairs, and he's still job searching. So we're still a little smidge of long distance. He's gone for his out-of-state job in person throughout the work week, and then he's here on the weekends. And then for me, work is amazing. I absolutely love it. We'll touch on that more when we get into the main segment of the episode, how work has been going. But as a sneak preview, it really is absolutely wonderful. And I'm not just saying that because this is a public platform. It really has been so great. And I could not be more satisfied with the choice I made in this specific office and working there as my first job out of school and working there in general. So my recommendation of the week, that is going to be trying to save money on your food. So that is for me, meal prepping and organizing a grocery list based off of looking through what's already in your pantry, what you have in your freezer, what's in your fridge, what's going to maybe spoil first if it's produce or meats or fish or things like that, and planning meals based around that. I have 2 cookbooks that we like to flip through. One is called 30-Minute Meal Prep, and that one is on Amazon. It's like $10 and it actually has really, really good recipes in it and kind of takes you through like, oh, you have chicken and these other ingredients. Here are multiple ways you can cook those same ingredients so you're not eating the exact same thing for 4 days straight. You might eat like a dinner that's one thing, lunch the next day, and then maybe lunch the following day, but you get like different dinners on day 2 and day 3. Then maybe they're like mix and match for lunch and dinner kind of thing, and you're eating different flavor profiles because you obviously have like your spice shelf in your house. So I really recommend that specific book, and just in general, like the thought process of trying to use what you have first, thinking through different ways you can make different flavors and different types of meals out of what you already have, and really just avoiding eating out for lunch at work. I know a lot of people do, but it really saves a lot of money if you don't go out to eat after work when you're in a rush, or you don't go out to eat during your lunch break. What is motivating me this week is definitely working. It's so fun to finally be a dentist. Obviously, there are some more like lows or struggles that you go through, but majority of the emotions, other than maybe being tired, is happy and excited and enjoying what I'm doing, which is so cool. And of course, very motivating when you're passionate about what you're doing most of the day, which for me is dentistry during the week. One thing that I learned this week, this is going to go into a bit of a story and an example, if you will, but I learn a lot every single day at work now, clinically as well as in communication aspects. But one thing that I want to talk about that sticks out to me is a big communication theme or challenge that I am working on. So it's going to be framing how you speak to patients to level them up a little bit before you send them off to whoever decides on scheduling treatment or maybe talks to them about finances. So for us, those are patient wellness advocates. Some places might call them treatment coordinators. But you have the classic story. You're doing an exam, you diagnose that the patient needs a treatment, and they say, okay, doc, I understand this tooth is breaking. Let's get it done. But I really only want to do it if my insurance covers it. Or maybe they just ask you, but how much is all this going to cost? So for me and for a lot of people, it's a really easy cop out to just try to like redirect the conversation or to shut it down with one sentence and then redirect from there. So a lot of times I would catch myself saying, oh, I'm so glad that you want to get this scheduled. We don't handle finances back here, but your awesome hygienist blank is going to take you up after we finish, and treatment coordinator blank will go over the cost with you. Maybe that doesn't sound so bad, but there's several things wrong with what I just said. And I literally did say this like multiple times this week. So I'm calling myself out here on how I can grow and improve. So first thing is that in this statement, you're being way too neutral. You need to start using words that help support the treatment coordinator to make their job a little bit easier when you go from clinical team out to the business team. You never really want to say cost. It's much better to say investment. And you want to use wording in general that supports the patient towards saying yes to treatment and getting it scheduled right away, not being dictated by insurance and not worrying about finances too much. You want to frame them that they want to get this done and it's a priority to them for their health, not just another expense like buying dinner or doing something to their car. Like you want them to see this as this is something that I need for my health. So that comes to how you go about the patient education aspect that you should have already done throughout the diagnosis process. But again, let's say they ask, how much is this going to cost? Or, wow, that all sounds really expensive. Like these are all things I've heard many times over the past 2 weeks. And in response to that, you can answer a question with a question, and that could be, so, patient name, can you tell me, is money the only thing keeping you from scheduling to get this crown? If they say no, I've heard crowns fail, or no, I just don't really understand why I need one, then you haven't done your job as a clinical team and you haven't fully explained things to them. So you need to go back to the drawing board on discussion and education. But if they say yes, I've just heard that crowns are really expensive, or yeah, the money's stressing me out, I really don't want to go over my insurance. You can say something like, I'm glad you're so ready to get healthy and get this tooth fixed.
Insurance really is only a coupon and it's never going to cover all of the treatment that you need. Our business team up front is awesome, and they're going to help you figure out the investment for this crown and how you can best utilize any reimbursements from your insurance and get this taken care of right away before it becomes a bigger problem. So that's kind of creating that urgency, which is really leveling them up to get them ready to go talk to the person to get it scheduled. You're framing it as an investment, and you're framing it as, we want to help you utilize your insurance as much as possible too, and you're going to get a reimbursement from them. So those are all really key things that I'm going to be working on when these questions come up, because they come up a lot. And even though we do have a great team that handles the finances, it's just not as good as it could be if you're too neutral or you just are dismissive when they ask about money. It's much better to go head on and throw yourself into that and get the talking out. But I know for me, I was fearful to say the wrong thing, like things that they don't want us to say. So I just didn't say anything at all. But I'm working on the confidence and the communication skills to kind of have my little spiel down, depending what the question is, that I can say to patients. So long-winded thing, but it's very specific as to what I learned this week and what I'm working on this week. With all that said, for our little intro, we're going to get into the first segment of the episode, which is moving, house updates, and future plans. Raise your hand if you've been putting off getting disability insurance. Jim Katchmar from Doctors Disability Specialists can help educate you about your options. I have personally worked with Jim to ensure that my strategy is appropriate for me. He took the time to explain key terms and make me feel really good about my decision. If I were to describe Jim in a few words, I would use knowledgeable, kind, and collaborative. Jim can be reached via email at james.katchmar@ddsteam.net, or you can call him at 207-671-2216. His website is www.ddsteam.net/team/Jim-Katchmar. Reach out for a no-obligation complimentary consultation today. No compensation was paid to this client for their testimonial. Their experience may not represent the experience of others nor predict future results. Thank you again to Doctors Disability Specialists for working with me on this episode. So, recapping a little bit of time travel back, if you haven't been keeping up with things or if you happen to forget what is going on, when I was in dental school in Ann Arbor and now I'm working as an associate dentist in a bit kind of rural Southwest Michigan. The main thing I would say with moving is that we've kind of spaced it out over time, because that was what made sense with starting this lease in this specific house that we really wanted. And that moving is so expensive, especially when you're coming out of school and you're coming into having no money for a short period of time before you start actually earning money from your job. So overall, I moved from Ann Arbor in mid-April, which is when we were finishing classes. This lease started April 1, so we were already paying for this place before I really needed it, and I wasn't going to be starting work until June 10th. So I started leasing this place a month and a half before I even really needed it. But that was really situational because we really wanted this specific place and we weren't confident that it was still going to be available, and it was a really good month-to-month deal. So net over 12 months, or if we decide to extend the lease, it was a good financial move compared to prices month to month for other things, without getting into too much detail of dollars and cents there. But that was kind of why we made that decision twofold. So I moved in mid-April, and I ended up hiring professional movers for moving all my stuff from Ann Arbor that I had packed myself over here to Southwest Michigan, and Ann Arbor's in Southeast Michigan, just for reference. So we're kind of driving across the state several miles. So that made it very expensive because it was a far move. It could have obviously been cross country or something, which would have been way, way, way out of budget, and you're better off just selling your stuff and starting over. But for me, I moved all my stuff that I had. I had a lot of heavy furniture and boxes. We were furnishing a home here with 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms and 2 living spaces. So a lot of space to cover if we wanted to actually utilize it and be able to host people. So that was a big investment, but I knew with all that amount of items, I didn't want the physical stress on my body, and I wasn't going to ask like my family or anything to help because again, I just didn't feel like that was right. And soon enough here, I was going to have money and be able to afford it. I'd been saving for about a year, like anything I made from social media, podcast income for this move. So I was prepared for the expenses, but it did pretty much, as I go through what happened over April, May to June and the decisions that we made with getting this house in order to where I liked how everything was, pretty much wiped out most of my savings. So not necessarily saying I recommend that, but that is the situation that happened. And I am going to be doing a podcast episode also in a few weeks about how I'm handling finances post-grad, now as a dentist, like different things I'm setting in place, maybe how I'm budgeting, all that jazz. So I think that will be a really fun and helpful episode and something I wish I would have been able to listen to back in the day as I was getting ready to graduate, because you hear a lot of financial podcasts and things, but you don't hear many from young dentists, or as far as I know, you don't hear any from young dentists. But over that time, once I moved in mid-April, we finished dental school. I was bouncing between being here in Southwest Michigan, my parents' place in Florida, visiting Justin, and being in Ann Arbor. I graduated in early May, and then at the end of May, I went to Greece, which was so fun. You probably saw over on my Instagram, which is now Dr. Haley DDS. So it's dr.haley.dds on Instagram if you want to follow me there and see Life of a Dentist. I shared a lot of pictures and videos of Greece on there, but it was my mom, my dad, my sister, her fiance, me, and then my fiance, Justin. It was about 12 days and it was absolutely amazing. And then we got back and I had 1 week to kind of get reacclimated, get the house in order, and then I started work. So I never really got fully settled into any kind of routine or like organize the house to where I wanted it to be throughout all that time from mid-April when I moved in until when we went to Greece at the end of May. Things were kind of settled in. There was some stuff here, but the whole home was not furnished by any means. I didn't have any of Justin's furniture contributing to where we wanted to put it in the house yet. We hadn't organized the closet. We were still wanting some more furniture pieces on top of what him and I were already bringing into the house. But circling back to the investment part, since this was April, May, and June spaced out throughout all of my kind of moving in, settling in process, we were able to space out when we had those big purchases and be a little bit more strategic about that and looking to shop sales for anything that we wanted to buy like in bulk for the house or any furniture. So we did buy pretty much every single thing on some form of sale, and I ended up getting a king mattress for us on Memorial Day sale because from what I was seeing in research, that's like the biggest mattress time for sales of the year. So I ended up doing that even though it was before I had, again, that like income coming in, but I knew I had enough saved from the past year to do it. So it was a little stressful / maybe not the best decision to spend majority of your savings when you hadn't started work yet, but I did know like I did have work and I had a guaranteed income and I knew it would be hitting my bank account at the end of June, things like that. So it wasn't totally a bad choice, but it was a little bit, I would say, stressful just seeing your bank account dwindle and dwindle and dwindle. And with Justin moving, he was going across states. So like I said, that's a very expensive move. So for him, we ended up going the U-Haul route to save money. And he didn't have that much furniture, but he had enough that we liked that it made sense to bring it here rather than try to sell it and buy new stuff. So it wasn't across country, but it was like within the Midwest. So we went the U-Haul route, but it was a lot more like laborious having to move things in to our own house, up and down stairs a little bit, but we managed since it was just a couple of heavy things versus with my move, like I would not have been capable with just me and him. And I don't have any like young, strong people I was willing to put out to do that for me. And I was not going to ask our parents either. So that's why I hired movers on my end, but we were able to make his move like a little bit more affordable given that it was across states by doing that. So that was kind of our priority there. And overall, like I said, it was just kind of an expensive, stressful time. Plus I was dealing with like getting everything together with going to Greece and those expenses. And we had some problems with like my engagement ring, like needing to get altered a little bit and stuff. So there was just like all these like random little things happening. And of course, wedding planning. I didn't even mention that in the life update, that since we got engaged in April, up until now, we've of course been wedding planning too, which is expenses with all of the deposits and just like can be stressful in the moment until you kind of nail things down. Now we're at the point where everything's kind of nailed down, but in the moment, again, when you're trying to figure out between 500 vendors, who do you want to work with? And then the ones you want, maybe one of them isn't available, then you're all panicky. But eventually you find someone that you like that's in your budget and you're excited and it's all good. But it can just be a lot mentally. And with all these different things happening up until when I started work, you can imagine that it could be a bit of a stressful time. However, we did our best to focus on the positive and tried to have fun with everything, with moving here and like creating our first space together and enjoying the time, celebrating that we're finally engaged and pretty much being done with long distance for the most part, and knowing that very, very soon I would start work and have my own income. So I do have an empty house tour on YouTube if you want to know what this place looks like from the little bit I've been describing. We absolutely love it here. It's a beautiful home. It's a bit of a newer build, so all the finishes are really nice. It's pretty clean for the most part, and it's a cute neighborhood with a lot of like young people and families for the most part. We don't have any kids, but it is cute to see a lot of like younger families around in our neighborhood. So if you want to see that, that's on my YouTube channel. And I'm going to be doing another vlog probably this coming week of my third week of work, where I can do an updated like mini furnished house tour just so you can see like the progress on how it came with us furnishing it and like the new furniture that we bought. If you're kind of into that stuff, I know I love watching house tours or apartment tours. So if you're like me, check those out on YouTube. That is up already and will be going up soon. Okay, we're going to transition into our second main segment for this episode, which is a recap of my first 2 weeks of work. As I said, I'm going to go through these just kind of as like the biggest highlights, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty and more full reflections in the specific 1 month out from starting work episode. But I could not leave you hanging because I'm sure you really want to know, what is life like working as a dentist, given that this is the Dental Download podcast. But I do feel like a frequently asked question is, what's something that's different about work than it was in school? Or like, what's the main differences? Is it hard adjusting? Any of those sorts of questions are very frequently asked. So here's the most major realization that I had over these first 2 weeks. It's kind of a long story, so bear with me here, try to follow. Back in dental school, we would see maximum 8 patients per week as dental students on external rotation. For my most busy one that I really enjoyed, we saw about 6 patients per day. So per day versus 8 per week at school. So you're getting a little bit more used to the busier pace when you're seeing 6 or 7 people per day. However, people think that the biggest adjustment is the pace of the clinical work, how long you spend doing the operative procedure. But to me, it is the mental load that is hard. And maybe even you want to say like your social battery. It's the need when you step into an operatory to be mentally sharp and create a total blank slate and just reset every single time you're interacting with a new patient throughout the day. And in real work, a real office, you're going to start with probably 1 column of your own, but eventually, keep in mind, you're probably going to have 2 columns of your own, plus doing your hygiene exams or periodic exams. So that's 6-ish of your own patients for operative works, fillings, extractions, crowns, things of that nature, and then maybe another column, but we're not even talking about that yet because I'm still only on 1 column of patients. So let's say 6 patients in my own column. And then some of our days we have 4 hygienists when there's multiple doctors there, but whatever doctor is free is going to do the exam. And oftentimes that's me because we're giving a lot of time for my operative work. So I'm done early, or maybe my schedule just isn't as full since I'm just starting to get going. So I'm doing a lot of the exams as well. So let's say I saw 6 patients for operative And in between them, or in between numbing someone and then taking a break, I might end up doing maybe 12 periodic exams or more. Sometimes it's maybe only 5, 6, but there's definitely been days where I've done in the double digits. So that means I'm seeing and diagnosing 12 patients from scratch, but only in a few moments. You get to look at their updated radiographs, and maybe I had downtime to go back and look through their previous radiographs. Maybe I didn't, so I'll just do that on the spot. If there's a specific caries lesion, I want to see if it's getting bigger or not, things like that. You're doing a lot of that just on the spot in just a few moments, really. Like, I don't even want to say minutes. You're making very quick decisions. So not to say that I'm not looking deeply at these exams, or I'm not preparing for these patients, or I'm not preparing for the operative work and like looking through the health history before I'm doing work. But it is a tiny percentage of the amount of time that you would spend in dental school preparing for one patient. Because in this case, I'm seeing 20-ish people per day, different individual humans that have different medical histories and different dental histories and different teeth and things I need to be looking at and diagnosing, compared to in school, you saw 1 or 2 per day. And you had hours and hours and hours to prepare and stare at the radiographs and look over everything over and over and over and over and over again. You just don't have that time, and you don't do that in the real world. So it's not to say that you're not giving the same effort. It's just the fact that your mental speed and clinical diagnosing skills need to dramatically increase for these patients in the real world. You need to diagnose so much faster, and you need to think through clinical decision making like at a pace so much more rapid than you did in school. So it's not so much that my clinical pace has to be different than it was when I was towards the end of D4, because that has honestly been fine. I get through my operative work just fine, but the difference of just patients, making decisions so quick. And also, I didn't even really touch on, again, that like social element and the small talk and trying to get to know people. Like it's so much on your brain, like the social chatty element of your brain, and then the analytical dentist part of your brain. You guys can imagine from what I'm saying just how intense that is compared to the difference of what you would do in school. It's pretty crazy to me. So it's not so much the clinical pace, the operative work, the drilling, the dentistry. It's that other side of it. It's the dentist's brain and the personal human-to-human interaction multiplying by so many people in one day compared to what you used to do is crazy. And I'm not saying that it's bad and I hate it. I love it. It's a great challenge, but it is night and day difference. Like that has been the absolute biggest difference.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Baker's, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Baker's worth it every time. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Look, Bumble knows you're exhausted by dating. All the, must not take yourself too seriously, and 6'1" since that matters. And what do I even say other than, hey? Well, that's why they're introducing an all-new Bumble, with exciting features to make compatibility easier, starting the chat better, and dating safer. They've changed, so you don't have to. Download the new Bumble now.
And I did vlog the first week of work. So if you want to see full week in my life, what it's like being a dentist now and how we kind of worked my schedule on week 1, definitely check that out on YouTube. But overall, the general consensus is that now that I'm working, I'm going to be starting with one column, and I get to tell them how much time I would like per procedure. I don't really have a set. I always do this long for one surface versus two surfaces. I always do this long for a crown prep because I'm more so going off of how difficult the case is. If they're a bunch of occlusals, I know I only need a few minutes for each of those. But if it's a bombed out MOD or MO or DO, whatever, some kind of class 2, just super compromised tooth, I know I'm going to need more time. So it's great that I have the ability to tell them in scheduling how many time units I need. And same thing goes for crowns, just how difficult they look is kind of how much time I give. And regardless, unless it's something I'm super confident in, like how much time I need for easy fillings, I do give myself a little bit extra time for anything else just in case, because I'd rather finish the patients early, they go on their way with their day, everything on their end is great, than keeping the schedule running behind and then future patients are starting late because I was running over. So I did not want to do that. So I'd rather have downtime where I can just review patient cases, ask questions to the other doctors, and do periodic exams on the patients coming in for hygiene. That's kind of how week 1 and 2 looked. I also, for week 1, was only doing like 1 or 2 procedures per day because they didn't know if I would have my license yet. And they mostly schedule people like 2 or 3 weeks out from when they make a diagnosis, just based on like their openings in the schedule. So they weren't putting people on my schedule yet for week 1 and week 2 because they only had about a 1-week notice that, hey, I got my license and I start next week. They knew I was starting, but we didn't know if I'd be licensed to do dentistry. So week 1 was pretty light. Week 2, I was seeing more patients per day, but not a full schedule. And then coming up on week 3, which is starting the week that you're listening to this episode, I pretty much have a full column of patients every single day. So that's kind of how things have ramped up and progressed to be. But I think that's everything I want to share for now, just because I covered a lot of it in that YouTube video. If you want to check that out, it does answer a few more of your questions that you guys all sent in on Instagram. But also, I'm going to have that whole episode about what the first month was like, and I want to be able to go more in depth there. And this episode is reaching the point of how long I like them to be. So I hope you all enjoyed this great catch up, and it was so fun getting to chat with you guys and really share how things have been going, just truthfully and honestly in all regards of life. Like, you can imagine that there's just a lot going on with the transition of moving, engagement, starting a job, so many life things going on. But I mean, I couldn't be happier, and I'm really grateful and just thrilled with where life is at right now. But it doesn't mean that every single day is super easy by any regards. But I will talk to you all next Monday when we have another guest.